Pride. Again, my name is Richard Cross. My pronouns are he, him, and I'd just like to do a land acknowledgement. I'm actually working from home, even though it looks like I'm in Seattle behind me, but I'm actually in Bothell, Washington. So I'm on the land of the Sammamish people, and the Sammamish River is right across from my apartments. It's very beautiful. So thanks so much for inviting me. This is a topic that I'm very, very passionate about. It's something that I've been working through ever since I was a college student in my undergrad. I was a member of our, at the time it was called the Gay, Lesbian, Bisexual Student Union, or what we call GLBSU. Since then, we've expanded our names to be a lot more inclusive, and that tends to be, the trends that we see today. But if you'd like to know a little bit more about myself, I do have a digital website, and so I put the link there. That's at about.me/richjcross. And for our topic today, I am going to be talking a little bit about my experience with what is known as employee resource groups. I'm going to talk a little bit about Out and Equal. I was heavily involved with Out and Equal, and I'm still involved with them today. And I'm going to give you some really good information about this organization that hopefully you all take with you. And then I'm going to go into a little bit about what does diversity and inclusion mean in Amazon, how we break those down into different affinity groups, and then specifically going to highlight Glamazon, the organization that I'm a part of, and a little bit about the global impact of Amazon and some of the ideas that we toss around as a group. And then we'll open it up for Q&A. Okay. So real quick, just to level set everybody on what are employee resource groups. And ERGs for short. They're very similar to the Pride group that you all have at Central Washington University. It's a way to enhance the experience of our working at a company such as Amazon, and it benefits the members. Now, you may think, oh, okay, well, you must belong to that membership in order to belong to that employee resource group. And that is not true. In fact, we love allies. If it wasn't for allies, these groups would not be able to make as big of an impact. So it's very important that everyone know that employee resource groups are not exclusive, they're inclusive. Now they do have versions of employee resource groups at each company, and I'll go into a little bit more detail about that at Amazon. But I'm going to just take a step back here real quick and just go over, what employee resource groups means in a larger, in the history of it. The first actual employee resource group happened at Xerox, and it actually started due to the Black employees getting together and wanting to address racial tension around it was around 1970 at the time. And so you can see that every time that there is some kind of upheaval or something dealing with some kind of racial strife or just some injustice, we tend to react to those. And one way is let's form groups so that way, we can protect those employees that are part of that marginalized group, but also gives the company an opportunity to learn from those groups. Now, the traditional definition of an ERG, it's employer recognized. That's really critical. Because before it was employer recognized, they used to have groups that would form their own nonprofits, and they didn't have direct ties to the company. That was kind of a model that you saw in the 80s. But since then, companies have really started to understand that they can leverage employee resource groups to actually impact their bottom line. And that's why you'll see different versions of employee resource groups. So a big one is called business resource groups, or BRGs. And then also we have what's called affinity groups. That's your more traditional naming convention. And so at Amazon, we have what's called affinity groups. Let's go ahead and go there. And then, just to give you some background, I worked at Boeing prior to Amazon for 11 years, and we went through a transition of calling them affinity groups, then calling them employee resource groups, and then calling them business resource groups later. So, the point is that if you go to a company, don't just look for affinity groups. They may be a different name. Okay, so the other big thing that I want everyone to know about is that there is an organization out there that specializes in workplace equality for LGBTQIA plus people and our allies, and it's called Out and Equal. It is the largest nonprofit that works for workplace equality for LGBTQIA, like I said, and they do an annual summit, and I highly encourage, even as students, to try and attend this summit. The summit is virtual, and I'm going to play a really short video to kind of just give you an idea of what the summit is about.
I was incredibly concerned that there would be a lack of energy and that spark that we all feel when we attend Summit.
So I was really disappointed that we weren't able to see each other in Vegas. I was blown away, really blown away at the way that Out and Equal was able to pull off a digital experience of Summit.
Welcome to the 2020 Out and Equal Workplace Summit. Seeing so many friends light up the chat box, this is the heartening start I had hoped for today.
Out and Equal has meant a lot to me and my family and my wife, so I'm thrilled and honored to be here with you.
Thank you for doing this with me. You're a wonderful conversation partner.
Thank you for the work you do every day to advance workplace equality.
The next universal truth can be boiled down to one word: action.
You can guarantee good trouble will follow me wherever I go.
We live in revolutionary times, and we need each other in order to get through these moments.
You all make up a force to be reckoned with.
From Bangalore to Sao Paulo to London to New York, our fates are absolutely inextricably linked.
I hope this was as fulfilling and wonderful for you as it was for me.
This year, virtually, we gave an experience to a global set of teammates that would have never been able to participate in Out and Equal before.
We had the same level of engagement. Our employees felt very, very connected to each one of the plenary sessions, all the workshops. And I have to say that even the offline interaction, it was super nice.
I believe that people, because they were attending remotely and they were kind of in their own safe space, that they were able to actually be more open and more transparent.
I don't have to feel like I have to be guarded about everything that I say, and I can talk about what I'm truly feeling, and know that I'm accepted.
It felt so strong, so it was almost like a healing area for so many months that we were working from home, disconnected from our teams.
The technology was absolutely amazing. And the most amazing part to me was seeing all the good mornings, good evenings, good afternoons from all over the world. Knowing that we were part of something that was global and we were part of something that was bringing together participants from all over the world, that was just an amazing feeling. That was an amazing feeling for me.
The level of connection, airing super impactful messages about the time that we're having, I think it was super, super inspirational.
And so you saw this year major brands come to the table and have real dialogue, not only about race in America, but the role companies play, and more importantly, the accountability and responsibility we all have as individuals to make sure that it doesn't become a moment and indeed is a movement.
Because if everybody feels included, if everybody feels safe, and if everybody feels equal, then the whole team wins. So I just think about meeting people where they are, creating that sense of belonging.
The virtual summit, it was able to keep us all safe. And that the business of belonging, the business of inclusion, and moving that forward, and the advocacy work that we're doing, it didn't end. And we still need to continue to do it in the digital world that we find ourselves in.
If there's any silver linings in what 2020 has brought us, it's the fact that we are more connected because platforms like this give us that capability. The work that I can do locally is now inspired by being able to participate in that. That's what made this year's summit so unique.
Our work is never canceled. Our drive for inclusion and belonging is never canceled. And our joy, found in this vast global network of friends and colleagues, is never canceled.
Awesome. So Out and Equal is a conglomeration of multiple ERGs that represent multiple companies, even schools, and they participate in both regional and global summits where they network and provide best practices in the form of workshops. And it's a great way for students and professionals to learn and develop the skills necessary to drive the DEI initiatives that they often find themselves leading in their companies. And that's a huge thing to ask anybody to do, is like, on top of your normal job, how can you help drive the needle to make change around, the people aspects of work and the cultural aspects of work. And, folks that are part of CW Pride, you're just like me. I was a part of a group like this in college. And the moment that I went into the professional space, I found myself in a new environment in a large company. And even before I got to that company, I knew I had to look up, what is this company? How inclusive is this company of people like me? If you're not doing that as a student, you're doing yourself a disservice. There's so much information out there right now that you can find some really good information on glassdoor.com about what the culture is like. Every company is going to do, especially during June, something that we call pride washing. And that is where everyone changes their logo and makes it look like, that they're hip with the scene, with the times, right? But symbols are one thing. Going and finding out what it's really like at that company is going to tell you whether or not you should waste your effort and talent there. Now, some people will say, some people have a huge appetite for wanting to drive change, and maybe you want to target those companies that have a bigger opportunity to move up in the rankings. Some folks, it's a lot of work. It's a lot of stress to feel like you're an uphill battle trying to get companies to change. And sometimes it's just easier to change companies than to change companies. I spent 11 years of my life at one company, had a really good experience, and then got to find out what it was like at another company. And I was blown away how different just their diversity, equity, and inclusion programs are. And so just do your due diligence and make sure that you're checking out these companies, and don't just look at what they publish on their website. Talk to people. Now, Out and Equal is a great way to go talk to people about those companies. And if a company is not represented in Out and Equal, that will give you a really good indication that there's, you may want to do some more research on that company. But you can participate in Out and Equal. Just join Out and Equal. They have a website, outandequal.org. And you can attend their summits. They actually publish most of their summits and the previous summits, all the materials on their website, including videos. But if you'd like to attend a future summit, you can easily get sponsorship from your company. Usually you just write a business case as to why. And right now, with diversity, equity, inclusion being at the top of most executives' minds, it's kind of a slam dunk in terms of going to some of these conferences. Now, you do usually have to do a report out, right? Because they're not just going to send you on a boondoggle for nothing. So be prepared that you're going to do a report out. Now, something of advice, your report outs don't need to be a recreation of the entire summit. Just focus on your top 3 takeaways and report those back. That will help you de-stress so you can focus on what you're there for, which is learning. And then when you come back, you're only taking your top 3 takeaways. And those are going to be your top 3 most impactful things from each one of these workshops, or however you divide and conquer with your peers. And then a third way that you can attend these summits is the second way is to apply for an Out and Equal scholarship. So there should be information on their website about, folks that are in need. Guess what? Your students, all students are in need. So you should apply for a scholarship. And then the third way, of course, is if you're lucky enough, you can pay out of pocket. I think the summit cost is reasonable enough that, it's pretty low. You'll get a really good return on investment. I know I've been to this summit at least 6 times now, both at the local level and at the global level. And I just can't speak enough about it, because it actually gave me all the tools that I needed to be successful in both my regular job while being a leader of an ERG. Okay. So now I'm going to talk a little bit more about diversity and equity at Amazon. So diversity and inclusion, it's the North Star at Amazon. We want to be the world's most, Earth's most customer-centric company in the world. And when we have customers, that means people. And in order to be that kind of company, we have to hire people. So we want to hire the best builders of all backgrounds to work and stay on Amazon because they are drawn to our mission, our value, our culture, and our leaders. And we're a company of builders. So if you're an entrepreneur or you're someone that likes to make things change the world, this is a great way. Amazon's a great company for you to work at. We have varying backgrounds, ideas, and points of view to invent on behalf of our customers. You all are benefiting from many of those inventions like Alexa, and you all are hearing about some of the newer things that are being tested in our markets. You've heard about drones. There's all kinds of stuff happening at Amazon. And the reason why we're able to innovate is because we leverage the diverse perspectives of all of our employees. The innovation does not happen in a vacuum. It happens when people from different backgrounds get together and solve a problem together. And that diversity, what does that mean? It's diversity of thought, it's diversity of experience. Diversity is difference that makes a difference. And so every Amazonian, when you get hired at Amazon, we want every Amazonian to feel comfortable sharing. We want you to bring your full authentic selves to work, and not only bring yourself to work, but you should always be trying to discredit your own beliefs. You're always trying to just find other people who have a different background or experience that might shed light on a problem you're trying to solve. I know I've been banging my head against the wall sometimes, so many times, trying to look at it, solve a problem based off of the information and experience that I have. And then I go take a walk, go talk to some other folks, go take a course or something on a subject that I didn't know anything about. And miraculously, there's an idea that pops up. And that's really just one simple example of how diversity works. It's all about sparking the innovation and sparking those discussions. And if everybody at work is more focused on who they are and they're kind of covering who they are and they're spending all those calories, trying to use different pronouns, trying to say, they don't want to talk about their same-sex spouse, they end up expending a lot of calories covering who they truly are. And there's plenty of studies that show that tax on being different is actually hurting companies. And so it's up to companies to create environments where you feel safe and that you feel like you can bring your whole self to work. And how companies do that is through ERGs. So, we're down in the weeds with where everybody is working. We've got our leaders at the company and they're more focused on the 20 to 30 years out. And we're focused on, yes, we can get to those great innovations, but you got to have people. And if we don't have the right people, then we've got to do something about it. And so with an employee resource group, we do all kinds of stuff. And I'm going to go into that in a little bit more detail. But overall, we want our employee communities where we operate to embrace that we are all human, we are all different, and we are all equal. Diversity and inclusion are core values at Amazon. So diversity at Amazon, we have 12 different affinity groups, and this list is always growing, right? So if there's an affinity and it makes business sense to make sure that group has support, it's just a simple write-up of why the affinity group should exist. And before you know it, you have a new affinity group. But in the meantime, you're more than welcome to join any of these kinds of affinity groups. We got people with disabilities, women in engineering. There's a huge focus on women for very good reasons. We know that we're trying very hard to have parity of representation and pay in the workplace. And so we actually have 3 women's groups. We got women at Amazon, women in engineering at Amazon, and women in finance at Amazon. So I think it's really exciting to see that happen. We also have the Black Employee Network, and of course, Glamazon for LGBTQIA plus allies, Indigenous, Latinos. Warriors at is for our military employees. And we also have families at Amazon, and then also body positive peers. Body positive peers is one of our newest one, and this is really around recognizing that there are different types of body types throughout, and we want people to feel comfortable in their skin and not to adhere to some sort of pre-conscribed version of what everyone is supposed to look like, because that is the opposite of what employee resource groups are trying to do. Now, another really cool thing about these employee resource groups is that some of them are very specific to an aspect of identities, such as race, where some affinity groups actually are intersectional. So Glamazon is a perfect example. Not only are we representative of LGBTQIA+, but we have every race, every background, every diverse ability from everywhere. And they just happen to also identify as a member of Glamazon. And intersectionality is a very important concept because if you look at diversity, equity, inclusion through an intersectional lens, you will quickly realize that it's at the intersection where our most marginalized groups exist. So for example, the most marginalized groups out of all the groups are going to be your Black trans women, and most likely Black trans women who don't have a job, may have a disability, both physical or invisible. And when you start to peel back that onion, it really begs the question, what are we doing to target those marginalized groups that are impacted by our programming the most? And often we go through this struggle of, well, we need to impact the most people, right? Let's put our dollars and get a huge ROI with as many people as possible. But our argument is that when you do that, you tend to skip over those marginalized groups, and those are the groups that really need the help from the RNGs the most. So that's another takeaway, is that don't look at these as separate groups, but look at them as groups that are working together, that have common affinities, but there are members that belong in all of them. And so it's a great tapestry of talent. Now at Amazon, just to kind of reiterate this point, I have here this demographic breakdown. This was a recent survey done by one of our Glamazonians that surveyed approximately 6,400 people. I know it's really hard to read, so I'm just going to have to explain this. What this chart means is this is the racial ethnic breakdown, and what you'll notice is that approximately half identify as white, but the other half identify as non-white or multiracial. So when we use this information and we look back at our programming, we notice that we typically only provide programming for that one large chunk. Now, it is the biggest chunk. However, look at all that other opportunity and all that intersectionality that we're missing on. So just a word of advice, try to make sure you're looking at that intersectionality, because it's very easy for dominant groups to center it around their demographic. Now, there's nothing wrong with highlighting, our white LGBTQIA plus employees. We just need to find that right balance, making sure that, we're representative of as many different folks in our community as possible. And this is across not just Glamazon, but the military groups, the disability groups, and so on. Now, a little bit more about Glamazon. It's an affinity group employee network for anyone interested in LGBTQIA plus issues, events, meetings, information. All are welcome. And we invite all Amazonians to join us in the community focused on sexual orientations and gender identities outside the heterosexual cisgender default. And then for anyone who does, some of these terms might be new, but cisgender is basically those that are born with the gender assigned that matches up to the gender that they feel inside. So just FYI. So sometimes people hear cisgender and they think, is that transgender? No, cisgender just means not the opposite of transgender. Okay, now the other things that we do is we enable Amazonians to engage with other LGBTQIA plus peers and allies across the entire company. We're a large company, we're a global company. So we have a huge group within Seattle, but sometimes employees may want to enhance their career by getting an opportunity at another location. Now, one of the ways that they find out about these opportunities is they talk to the Glamazon chapter. So that's one way that the employee resource groups or affinity groups can be used to help you navigate your career. Now, we also seek and promote diverse perspectives across geographic lines. This is a huge opportunity for Glamazon, because here in the United States, we have a lot of rights and a lot of benefits. But in other countries where we operate, it's not so easy. So we also look at it like we're not going to tell countries that they need to change their laws. However, we are going to influence by explaining the power of diversity and inclusion. And I'm not in like the strategic roles like that to decide which countries we're going to go in, but we also try to make sure that those countries are places that we can establish affinity groups, because to make sure that we're supporting those members that may be in other countries where it's not safe for them to actually be out. We want to at least provide some avenue for those members that if they do feel uncomfortable while at work, that they can reach out to us and we can try to help them as best we can. And like I said, we're trying to promote Amazon's LGBTQIA plus acceptance in our communities across the globe, and also advocating for internal and external policies that focus on LGBTQIA employee needs. So we have like EDNA, which is the Employment Non-Discrimination Act. I know that this was a big one that was in the law. And of course, everyone knows marriage was a big one. And Amazon has been at the forefront of supporting those initiatives. And it's just good for business. I mean, we're hiring people, people get married, people have lives outside of work. And if you really want to have the best talent working for you, you need to address these issues. So that way I can come to work and Marcus can come to work, and we're not worried about, that I can't talk about my husband, because I'm going to talk about my husband, but there are other folks who don't feel comfortable yet, expressing themselves. And we want to make sure that, anyone, regardless of what level of comfort they're at, they feel like they can. And I talked a little about intersectionality first, but in terms of just definitions, the intersected nature of social categorizations such as race, class, and gender, as they apply to a given individual group, regarded as creating overlapping and interdependent systems of discrimination or disadvantage. Now, this is really important, that last part, discrimination or disadvantage. Now, most people would think that, if you have two marginalized identities, so I am gay and I'm also half Filipino, that those become, summations of one another. But in reality, what happens with intersectionality is that it actually transforms the discrimination that you are experiencing. Not only is it worse, but it's often something very different than what our straight counterparts would face. So, for example, and I'll speak to my own experience, but I would say that my experience as a gay Asian man is more similar to the experience that Asian women might have when Asian single women may have while they're dating or are finding a significant other. And there's a lot of discrimination that happens in those scenarios. And so we just want to make sure that folks don't just look at gay people as, oh, you're just gay, there's no other part of your identity, right? No, there's multiple aspects of my identity. And sometimes discrimination in one part may not be as bad, but then in some other aspects, it could be huge and a lot bigger than if I was just straight and gay or straight and Filipino, for example. So just something to think about. Now, this past year, the type of impact that Glamazon makes is we do a lot of community outreach. We partner with our internal organization called Amazon in the Community. And we also have a mechanism called GiveHub. This allows us to vet organizations that Amazonians and Amazon chooses to donate money to. So if you are a member of ARG, you get to have a say. And we want to make sure that your voice is represented. There has been numerous times that companies have donated funds to an organization only to find out that that organization is entirely homophobic and transphobic. So it's a company's imperative to be ahead of that by leveraging the diversity within their company to vet these organizations out, because that's a bad look. I think everyone can agree. If you're promoting LGBTQIA inclusion, but then you're donating to a company or a nonprofit that is not in alignment with your company's values, it really sends a signal to your employees that this may not be the right place for me to work. And that goes back to that whole pride washing concept. The other thing that we do, chapter lead development, this is really about leadership development. Now, we come from a community of being marginalized, and sometimes when you're marginalized, you end up developing leadership skills from that marginalization. And it's just a matter of how do you articulate those skills, because they're different than your other peers, but they're just as valuable. So we help folks who want to start a chapter or become a board member develop those leadership skills so that they can make an impact, not just in terms of Glamazon, but in their normal jobs. Now, the other big keynote event that we do every year, and everyone knows it, and unfortunately the past 2 years we haven't been able to do it because of COVID, but Pride, the Pride Parade. So Seattle has a huge Pride Parade. Most major cities will have Pride Parades, and then smaller cities will have Pride Parades too. We try to sponsor as many of those as we can physically, depending on the chapters that we have in those local and rural areas. And the other thing that I want to point out with Pride is that Pride is and has always been a celebration of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I'm sure you all have heard or are learning about the history of Stonewall, but Stonewall was a riot against police brutality that was targeted against LGBTQIA+ people. And it is noted that the first two people that were kind of the troublemakers at the time. I call them troublemakers, but really they were courageous women. And that was Marsha P. Johnson and Sylvia Rivera. We owe a lot to them because we would not have the rights that we have today if it wasn't for these two brave women standing up and calling out the injustices as they saw it. And the sad reality, though, and why I bring this up, is that at the time, they were ostracized by their own community for what they were doing. And we look back now and realize that they are heroes. And so here we are today, and we still see some of the same marginalization and discrimination happening within our own community. And so if there's anything that I will fight for, or why I'm passionate about this, is to bring to light that there have always been Black and brown people in the history of Pride, and it is part of American history. I'm going to also now show you another quick video about Glamazon, and then we'll continue the presentation.
I'm transgender, and I was not out to people at work and not out to most of the people in my life until a couple of years ago.
In previous jobs, I've been one of the few LGBT employees there.
Well, I'm originally from South America, so I live in there 26 years, and I work at several companies where in the country is really frowned upon being gay. After suffering through all that, you start becoming more resilient to it.
Seattle's a city full of transplants, and a lot of people come here from all different parts of the world, and one of the great things about Glamazon is this sort of instant source of community.
Glamazon is inclusiveness to me.
I think it's a diverse perspective.
I think that what's beautiful about the community is that it can provide so many different things to so many people.
When I think of Glamazon, I think of an organization that provides visibility into our community and allows the possibility for our allies to take part and for those that might not feel like they're part of a community to be a part of one.
I think it's critically important that, particularly for the men and women who are looking to transition, to start that process, that organizations like Glamazon exist that can help and support them.
For me, it added a lot in terms of just finding a place here in Seattle. I moved across the country. I moved here from Miami, so I didn't know anybody when I got here. So Glamazon was a great community just for me to find people to hang out with, people like me.
And I think with Glamazon, what you see is that Amazon is an incredibly inclusive company, and I've only had great experiences here, but I think the value of Glamazon is that it gives me a support network in terms of connecting with other LGBT professionals, but it also gives me a place to grow my career and understand the larger business.
Amazon is respecting the employees not just at the professional level, they're also respecting the employees in the social level. That's what I really appreciate about.
To be a gay Native American at Amazon, I have tremendous pride that my company is committed to diversity and inclusiveness.
What I've seen is there's a lot of be who you are, celebrate it. Everybody's very accepting.
Yes, I'm transgender. I'm also an Amazon employee. I'm an engineer. In terms of how important Glamazon is to Amazon, that we value as a company being peculiar and being a little different. And I think that what Glamazon is the embodiment of that.
I've been able to feel like I'm home.
I think it reflects the company's commitment to diversity and inclusiveness. Definitely gives me a great sense of hope.
I was always the odd one. I was always the gay one, or I was always the only one. It was very difficult not only being a woman, but also being a lesbian and also being a minority. You don't have that here. When you come in, you're not one of, you're a part of. And that feels really great.
Cool. And that last one right there, Vaughn, she's actually the president now of our Global Glamazon chapter and just got promoted into a senior diversity, equity, inclusion business partner for Amazon. So great to see how she's moved up through the ranks and has been part of Glamazon the whole time. So if there's any lesson to be learned there is that there are huge success and rewards. It's a lot of hard work, but if you stick with it, you can actually grow your career in many different ways, more so than if you were just to go in and be like an engineer, right? Glamazon provides avenues and networks that you would not get access to if you were just in your own work group. Another thing too about employee resource groups, I hear a lot from the teams. I lead a committee of volunteers, and they love coming to my meeting, other than, to hang out with me, but they tell me constantly that it's their funnest meeting of the day, where they don't have to think about work and they can really focus on things that they're passionate about. And ideally, what I really hope is that not only, I don't want them to feel like they need to go to a separate meeting to feel that energy and that passion. I'd like for them to feel that way in every meeting that they go to. And so that's another reason why I'm so passionate about this, is because I want to help lead by example and show them how they can weave both DEI and engineering into one skill. And it makes them stand out. It makes them peculiar. And that's what Amazon really looks for, is who are those peculiar people? Now, a little bit of history about Glamazon. We started in Seattle in 1999. It was an employee, and it was an Amazon employee with strong bias for action, who said, I just want to get together and find my other common folk. And so they made an email list, and it's grown from there. We're now recognized across the globe. We have more than 50 chapters across the globe, and they're constantly growing. I'm sure that number is probably closer to 100, and we just haven't gone back and checked. And then a lot of people ask us, where did the name Glamazon come from? Glamazon was actually a contraction of gay lesbians at Amazon. Obviously, we wanted to be more inclusive. So we asked all of our, trans, non-binary, and other employees, what they felt about the term Glamazon. They actually said it was actually a very inclusive term that they resonated. So we got lucky. And, so it is a highly recognized name. I love seeing new employees come into Amazon, and we give out stickers, and we have a table full of Glamazon stickers, and our table is the first one to be emptied because everyone loves the Glamazon logo. And so it's like, great. Now when people have their stickers, we typically put our stickers on the back of our laptops. And so when you see Glamazon stickers, you get really excited because now you have something to talk to somebody about. And even if they don't identify, people are like, oh, yeah, I love Glamazon. I'm not a member, but they'll open up to you. And that's the beginning. That's how you make innovation start to happen, is breaking down those barriers and earning trust by just getting to know people on a very personal level. Now, today we focus on the GLAM to emphasize inclusivity of all members of the queer community and including our allies. Now, our impact, we have worked with several internal stakeholders, and we have scored repeatedly 100% on the Human Rights Campaign Corporate Equality Index. The HRC score is something a lot of companies try to achieve 100% rating. This is publicized. A lot of companies will show this on their websites that they've achieved this rating. And if I were you, I would do my due diligence and make sure that I only apply to companies that score probably not 100%. 100% is the highest, but there are a lot of companies that do. But I would say any company that scores 90% or higher is a good company to work for. And the criteria is constantly changing. So that's why I say you need to give them a little bit of wiggle room, because sometimes these changes on the scoring criteria happen and the companies don't have enough time to react. So give them at least a year or two to get caught up. And the biggest impact to scores lately have been around gender neutral bathrooms and gender neutral language and policies and those kinds of things. Now, Glamazon Seattle, if you were to come to our HQ, you would see all the rainbow flags and those kinds of things. So we do the Pride flag raising ceremony. We've had our 5th one this year. And this year we went from having the traditional rainbow flag to our more inclusive Pride flag, which has the trans colors and then the black and brown for people of color. And the other thing that we have done that we're very proud of is our Amazon Transgender Toolkit. So if a trans employee comes out at work and says that they're going to transition, we make sure that the team, the managers, and everybody, that support group, understands what that transition means, because it's critically important, not just for the person transitioning, but also for the team that are going through that transition with that employee. It creates a much more better environment for that employee and the team. I'm not going to go over that last video because we've only got 2 minutes. But just giving you guys an idea of our structure, it's very traditional, like a nonprofit. We have our executive sponsor, which is going to be somebody that's not part of the membership, but is someone that's an executive that kind of coaches and guides us and gives us mentorship. But we'll have president, vice president, and then different directors. These are going to be different depending on your company and how you set it up. And some of the events that we put on are networking happy hours, intercorporate events, monthly informal lunches, the speaker series, Pride Parade, Trans Pride March is a big one that we're started to do. And also we do a lot of annual board offsite and planning, so leadership development. And I won't go through that, and I'll just end here on this page, highlighting just a couple of the chapters across the globe celebrating Pride. And so we have got representation here as far as Munich, Germany, Tokyo, Japan, Seattle, Washington, Arizona, and I believe New York City are included in these pictures. And with that, that is my presentation on why ERGs matter and how you can leverage them to enhance your career.
Thank you, Richard. Wonderful. And so much information. We want to open it up now. If any of you all have any questions or comments, Richard is here to answer anything you may have about the workplace and these work groups and diversity.
No question. I was just saying that was wonderful. There was so much information to be shared there. I just really appreciated seeing a totally different way of thinking and understanding inclusivity in the workplace. I just, I'm smiling. You can't see me, but that was just, it was very inspiring. So I just wanted to say thank you so much.
You're welcome. Just looking over the chat, lots of great comments. Thanks. Oh, sorry, Marcus, I just saw your message about, hopefully it wasn't too bad.
Oh, no worries. You did an awesome job, Richard. And I think Mike actually have a question for you. What has been your highlight as far as being at Amazon so far? What has been the most kind of valuable experience you've had with Amazon as a whole?
Let's see. There's so many things that are going on. I think the biggest thing for me is the recognition that my team and my employer has around the passions I have. Like I'm an engineer by trade. And I can do program management with my eyes closed. But really when people ask me, how are you so effective at what you do? And it really comes down to how I treat and develop others. So, it seems weird that just treating people with respect is something that you have to remind people. But in the workplace, there's so many different kinds of pressures. And sometimes you tend to act faster than you realize. And so, when you're in an affinity group, you're kind of relearning that, people are people and people are different. And so getting recognized at work for not only what I'm doing for my job, but then like the work I'm doing for Glamazon has created an opportunity for me to lead what's called that reliable equity, diversity, and inclusion platform that we're building out. So we are trying to figure out a way to get the information to the people that need to develop cultural competency. And it's really difficult because if you use the internet, there's all kinds of information that's out there, right? And you don't know if it's right, wrong, or whatever. So imagine a curated experience where similar to a health app and being able to, put your goals in there and then have it suggest, these are the types of experiences, exercises, or people or affinity groups you should engage with to develop those cultural competency skills. So I would say like that, being able to blend both passions of engineering and diversity, equity, inclusion have definitely been the highlight.
And knowing you personally, I know you're just having a ball, kind of actually doing backstrokes right now. So
yeah, and I will say, something that Marcus definitely helps me with is, this work is hard work. This work is not for the faint of heart, and it does. You do need to have a support system in place. Your friends are important. Your mental health is important. It's very easy with this time to get so ingrained in all of the stuff that's happening that you can get so, I guess, passionate or upset around things that are happening, especially things that are out of your control. And so you definitely need to make sure that your mental health is in check. And it's always good to have friends like Marcus around because they'll help you keep yourself in check. So
that kind of leads me into, the self-care aspect of it. What do you do for self-care? Because this can be such hard work and everything.
Yeah, that's a great question. I know for me personally, I actually hired a personal trainer. And so I've been going to the gym, but yoga is a really good one for a lot of people. I also play a musical instrument. So I have volunteered in community bands to just, I say that music is like my yoga. So it causes me to focus on something that is outside of what I normally am dealing with. And it gives me a lot of pleasure. So, you definitely need to have that balance of stuff that you love, that you're passionate about, stuff that you're getting paid to do, and stuff that you just love that you're not getting paid to do, but helps you kind of mellow out.
Richard, I'm Steve Lang. I'm the a career counselor for the Des Moines and Pierce County campuses. So my question is, what can we as career counselors be doing to really help the students that we work with? Is there any particular advice you can give us?
Yeah, I would say, like there's, if a student's coming to you, and here's something I think that would be helpful. I think most marginalized students aren't going to come to a counselor. They're going to need you guys to get out there onto the field and actually approach them and go into the spaces where they're at. Because I know that when I was a student, and it's shame on me, I only went to the counselor when I first started, and actually I didn't have an understanding of the role that you all had, because coming from a family where I was the first person to go to college, we didn't have these discussions around these critical people that are there, that are support systems for you. And so the more that you can get out into these kinds of groups, I think is going to be beneficial. And then also as individuals get closer to graduation, helping them really understand, especially if they come from a marginalized background, that some companies are going to be better for them than others. And it's up to them to do the homework. But it's also important that if they do go to a company, that they feel like they're not, the phrase is like the golden handcuffs. So this happens a lot. And it happens a lot, especially with your Asian students, where they call, the Asian minority myth is a huge, huge issue. And what happens is you'll end up having Asian folks actually get paid very, very lucratively, but they are often closed out of management opportunities. And when that happens, they actually, in the long term, are left out of opportunities to get paid even more, because management is where, the bonuses and large economic, you can move up quickly. But often marginalized groups are shut out of those kinds of opportunities. So it's really important for groups, especially LGBTQIA, to kind of start looking into that data. Companies are publishing it more and more. They're still not being as transparent as they can be, but they're at least breaking it out. At Amazon, you can go on our website and you can see the diversity breakdowns, and we do it at both corporate and both in the field. So you can kind of start to see, that there are two different and very different environments, and you'll see those reflected in the numbers. And really what we're showing is that it's an opportunity, right? It's an opportunity that we're hiring diverse applicants, and everybody's diverse. Let me just point that out. Everyone is diverse. But what we're noticing is that when it comes to demographics and how people identify, those that identify as different often are not moving up through the ranks as fast as others. This presents an opportunity. Now, I think it's important that career counselors, have these discussions with students, because it's a sad reality. And it's something that I think mentally and psychologically, your students need to be prepared for, because it is very different than being on a college campus where things are much more equitable, fair on college. And decisions are made in a business that may seem unfair, but there's usually really good reasons for those decisions. But sometimes there's also decisions that are being made because of bias. And you can easily see where that bias is by just simply looking at the numbers, and asking really tough questions around how do they hire, how do they promote. And I think the other thing too, Steve, that would be very advantageous for students is knowing the difference between a mentor and a sponsor. I think all I heard growing up was mentor, 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 and I've got tons of mentors. But at the end of the day, the only people who can actually help you in your career to give you a promotion or get you an opportunity is a sponsor. And those are going to be people who advocate for you when you're not around. And that's essentially your managers, your senior managers, and other folks. I mean, your future is within their hands. And we need students to understand that they need to talk to those managers up front as early as possible, so that they can be in control of their own careers and not just their managers making up what they assume about somebody. So.
Thank you, Richard. I mean, that, when you first started, the students don't come to me. And I think most of the students that I have seen have been brought to me by someone else, which, and then the other thing that our staff has been talking about is doing more outreach and doing presentations to groups and letting them know we're available and we're very supportive and we want to help them as much as possible.
Awesome. Okay.
Does anyone else have any questions for Richard? The floor is open.
I have one more. I'm going to go back. You had mentioned the Human Rights Equity Index. And I've heard that term before, but is there a specific site that does that for all the organizations and companies that participate? Probably not all of them participate, but
yeah, it should just be hrc.org. But let me get you the actual link because there's so many.
I've probably seen it before, and I mean the reason I'm interested is we are updating our diversity, equity, and inclusion resources for over the summer for our career services office.
Let's see, resources. Yeah, so it's going to be on this website, but it is, if you go to this website right here, it will start to talk about their work, and then you can learn more about how they are tackling inequality on all fronts. But there should be something on their website that talks about the actual equality index. I'm just searching for it now because they're always changing these websites around, so you never know where anything is anymore.
Yes, I'm aware of that. I just looked at a bunch of websites that University of Washington and other institutions had, and there were a lot of dead links. So I've updated them all for our new resources. So
yep. So I just put a link in there that's got their basically FAQ, and it was updated in end of April, so it's fresh. And I think if you just check out that FAQ website, it should answer most of your questions about the index, how it's measured, how they come up with the criteria and stuff like that, and how often the criteria changes.
Great, thank you, Richard.
Yep.
Richard, I have a question. The Glamazon group, I think I saw something in your PowerPoint about community outreach. Do you all ever visit college campuses and table or just have information sessions?
Yeah, I think we do engagement requests. I haven't seen one lately because of COVID. But if a college requests that they would like Glamazon representation, they would just email someone like myself, and then I would submit a ticket to our larger group, and then we'd figure out if the opportunity one aligns with the values and all that kind of stuff, which university, of course it does, because we're trying to hire people. And then we just make sure that we have the resources. We have a lot of canned presentations like the one that I have here that I shared with you all, that's already gone through PR and all that kind of stuff. And as long as the ask is, within reason, then there shouldn't be a problem. It's just a matter of, do people have the time and are they available? Of course, with virtual, I mean, this opens up a whole other medium that makes stuff like this possible. I personally like doing presentations in person. I know I'm a weird millennial. I don't like all this virtual stuff, but yeah, we also have our own conferences in-house that we do. And we're always trying to figure out ways to engage with the larger community. And so there could be partnerships and stuff like that.
That's wonderful. Great opportunities.
Yeah, Richard, I'm wondering if, the expansion of this virtual presentations has made information more accessible to students that wouldn't normally show up at an in-person event. And I'm wondering about your perspective on that.
Yeah, I think absolutely. I think, going on a company's website, there will be a ton of information. But we do things like, we even do these things called coffee chats, where say you're applying and you're like, you're a high potential candidate, and one of the things that's preventing you from accepting a job at Amazon is you want to speak to somebody. So we actually set up coffee chats, 30-minute coffee chats, where the person that's interviewing can decide, do they want to speak to somebody that's from an affinity group, and which affinity group, or would they like to talk to you? And then we notice gets sent out to all the affinity groups, and then people jump on the opportunity to come speak to somebody to help them make that decision. So we're very passionate. So I think that like any of these opportunities that we have to either be in person or virtual are opportunities that we love to hear about. We can't say yes to everything, but the earlier we know about something, the better that we can actually accommodate.
Yes, so Richard, thank you so much for today, for donating your time to us and giving us such awesome information and resources. Can't thank you enough. And the conversation continues at 1:05. There's 3 different 30-minute workshops. All are recorded, but please feel free to attend one of them. And then we're going to finish our day today with another stories, personal testimony. So great stuff today. But again, thank you so much, Richard, for being with us today.
Awesome. Glad to be here.
And everyone have a great day, and we'll see you at one of the workshops and hopefully at the last keynote session. Bye-bye.
Bye.